afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's listening to all the three presenters. There's especially the last two presentations. I could relate a lot. I'm from Nepal, and I was for the first time I saw the data. The numerical data, actually the stats. So, and I think I can borrow. I will read that later and borrow a lot of things from there, even for this research as well. So, yes, my name is Bhavana, and I am right now associated with Shanjata Liverpool University, which is in Suzhou. And today I want to share an evolving inquiry into what higher education could look like when we actually take the community seriously as partners in knowledge. So the title of the presentation is Communiversity as Borderless Practice, and I want to unpack each of those words, especially the border, how it's borderless practice as we go. So the problem, so how we actually started thinking of it is since I've been associated with higher education since 2015 actually, and the common things that we have been discussing and learning is and it also that within the deficit of actual data, the informal conversation kept on going around this employability issue. Then also it was regarding how there is a rapid technological disruption, and especially in Asia and in Nepal, like this kind of it's very difficult that we mitigate that technological discrepancies as well. And then there is also shifting student demographics. Then comes the growing demand of social relevance as well. But if we move on to the Nepali context, then the conversation shifts on to brain drain heavily. So despite significant expansion in higher education, brain drain is one of the challenging problems that we have been navigating. Like over 668,000 students received no objection certificates to go abroad in just the last 5 years. And the problem here is they are not just going there for higher studies, they're actually settling there. And they're not returning back, and that's what has been one of the major problems that's going on. And nearly 494 billion Nepali rupees has left Nepal for overseas education. So, and in the first 8 months of the this fiscal year alone, rupees 993.89 billion was spent abroad, which is 8% up year on year. And another important part is our education system. Higher education is highly politicized, which is creating a lot of troubles. The recent change in government, they are trying to work on it, but it will possibly take a lot more time to work on this. Another problem that we keep on hearing. Maybe because of the byproduct of what the political governance, unstable political status, is also the lecture-based pedagogy, and students keep on complaining about it, and especially the 80% of students who are concentrated in management, education, in humanities. Account for only 0.115% of enrollment in the university. And another one is this rural-urban inequality that's very huge. Students come to city areas to study, and the same thing happens for the students who come to from rural area who come to city. They don't go back to their village, and the ones who are in the city, they want to go abroad and they don't come back to the country. And that's the change that's going on. So in this context, so we were group of educators. I along with other educators, there's a huge group of educators who are working on this. We wanted to raise especially three fundamental questions, and that is whose knowledge matters, because we kind of the discourse that was going on around kind of was moving on in we're borrowing, or we are getting everything in the university that we are teaching is heavily influenced by the West. So in that context, how whose knowledge it really matters, and who participates in learning. That was also one very significant question, because the data that Professor So like really showed, actually the higher education institutions that are in Nepal, they are like now gradually turning vacant. The number of teachers are now is actually now going to be higher than the number of students. The student teacher ratio is very like high. The number of teachers is higher than the students. So the higher education institutions are now in a dilemma whether to invest further in the infrastructures, or to invest, or to also like invest in like the knowledge system. So this particular research really focus on the participation, for whom and for whom we are catering this, and actually who benefits from higher education as well. So in this context, the research question was like, how can community embedded pedagogical design reconfigure knowledge hierarchies, student agencies, and institutional sustainability within higher education systems marked by inequality and governance fragmentation? And for this, the three connecting questions were related to knowledge hierarchies, that is like who holds authority over what counts as legitimate knowledge, and then another was about student agency, how educational structures enable or constrain participation, and the third one was institutional sustainability, whether transformative models can survive within existing governance framework or not. So in that context, one of the things that we wanted to try was Communiversity as a response. So Communiversity, we consider this as a borderless practice of higher education transformation, and we really wanted to root this in community embedded pedagogical design. So here, Communiversity is not a program in when we started it, it was not a program in a very conventional sense. It was better understood, and as it's evolving, is evolving design inquiry. So one that really asks what happens when we place community life, not just in the lecture halls, but like it's just like going back to our roots. So when we were talking about, when we brought in Communiversity, our what did we really mean by borderless practice? So the term borderless often evokes very international mobility or globalization. That is like not how we want to use it here. So borderless practice for us refers to the intentional dissolution of three particular boundaries. The first one is we really wanted to focus on epistemic boundaries. That is the assumption that university hold a monopoly on legitimate knowledge is by drawing on flickers. Like we thought that Communiversity is can challenge this by treating community knowledge as equally valid. And the second boundary that we wanted to challenge was the institutional boundary, that is the wall separating universities from communities, local government, and industry, which is showing that genuine partnership between industry, community, and the university actually requires opening the institution and consulting with the community members as a crucial part of knowledge generation. And the third one is pedagogical boundaries, that is between theory and practice, and teacher and learner, assessment and lived experience. And here we are inspired by Freire and Communiversity, and we reimagine Communiversity as the community, as the classroom in itself. So the argument here is that these distinctions does not disappear in itself. Rather, like it becomes more permeable through intentional educational design. So we really focused on designing, and for that we use like three theoretical models. That what the first one is community as curriculum, which challenges the assumption that valuable knowledge exists primarily within universities and positions community life, practice, and wisdom as legitimate educational context. The second one is the triple helix theory, which brings in the collaboration of university, government, and industry, and Communiversity extends this by centering community into this relationship. And the next next one is we brought in experiential learning. Unlike conventional models that move from theory to practice, we wanted to move from like field to theory. So that is how our theoretical that is how we borrowed from these theories. And the study thus adopts this design-based research. It's methodology particularly suited to studying education innovation, and we considered this as a part of an innovation, and we wanted to see how our design is enacted, and we reflected on that, and then we went on to refining it. So our data sources are mostly the facilitated documentation. Then we also took student reflections. Then we had learning cycle transcriptions and community feedback sessions after each design models were implemented, and then project outputs and artifacts were a part of the data sources. So when did it actually begin was the Communiversity in the pilot session began in 2023. It was a 60-day residential summer program which was implemented in Pascal municipality of Nepal, which brought together a shared learning ecosystem, which at that point had 19 students, and local government partners, industry collaborators were there, community mentors and educators were there. So students lived within the community while engaging with interdisciplinary learning across sociology, entrepreneurship and data science. Most of the students in that pilot program where was a mix of students from Pascal in itself and then students outside of Pascal. The course shift in this pilot program from this was very fundamental, that rather than treating community as a context for learning, Communiversity treated community as curriculum. So from this pilot program to now, the evolution has been very instrumental. As the DBR evolved through iterative cycles, we still can't say this is the final product, but we are just moving towards a better question. That is, we have been continuously asking what needs to be changed, what should be retained, and what new knowledge has evolved so far. So far, we have evolved into 4 different stages. That what started with 2023 summer program. Then 2024, it was a winter program based on the learnings from the summer program. And then after that, 2025, it was most about the social innovation fellowship, where we tried to reach in from the learnings of the both summer and winter program, and try to move from not just in one particular municipality, but to wider Nepal. And now 2026, it has evolved as a master's degree program in social innovation and entrepreneurship, which is the first program of its kind in Nepal in higher education. So the summer program actually revealed that the transformative potential of community embedded learning, but also exposed to challenges. So students demonstrated significant growth in agency and critical thinking through reflection rituals. Community validation emerged as one of the strongest pedagogical features, but at the same time, the residential model requires substantial resources, which was one of the constraints of the first model in 2023. And we really had to refine structure while preserving the core principles, and reflection was embedded more intentionally. Stakeholders' involvement was expanded, and sort of more focused formats were tested. Then in the DBR cycle 2, the winter program, the fellowship emerged from a very different design challenge. Students did not simply want immersive learning experiences. They wanted opportunity to continue working on community challenges. And here the core question was can the model move beyond a short-term education experience and support sustained innovation or not? And that led us to the Social Innovation Fellowship, which allowed to taste whether community-based learning could evolve into community-based innovation. So shifting the focus from learning about communities to creating solution with the community. So then now from that to this year, moving on to the master's program, it represents the largest design iteration so far. So the central design question now has become is what would happen if community as curriculum become the foundation of an entire degree. So it definitely had we did face a lot of challenges, especially when we wanted to offer it as a degree bearing program. So rather than adding community engagement to a traditional educational degree, this 15-month MSIE program is built around the idea that community itself becomes the primary site of learning across multiple regions of Nepal, with interdisciplinary curriculum, capstone, pathways and community as its core architecture. So Nepal being a very highly diverse country with three particular geographical terrains, that is Himalayan region, mountain region, and the Tarai region or Madhes region. So this particular program tends to bring in all these geographical locations as well. So the question is no longer whether community embedded learning works. The question now for us is reshaping the architecture of higher education itself. So the finding so far has been one related to the epistemic justice, that how dual lens assessment has become one of the key foundations of this program. The another one is related to student agency. That is the key insight, that agency was not treated as an individual trait. It was a design outcome. So if students are not feeling this having of agency in themselves, then it's a flaw in design, in which the higher education institutions should be able to work on it. The third finding was related to scalability. In this kind of transformative pedagogies, it requires transformative institutions as well. And one of the biggest constant was not finding being enough funds for it, which still is a constraint, and donor dependence, accreditation rigidity was there, and the university is not recognizing this as one of the programs was also was a problem. So in this context, so what really happened was we also learned, like, from those findings, the major transferable design principles that emerged for us was community as a co-educator, which means that community members are not subject of study of recipient of service, but they are active participants in the teaching learning process. Dual lens assessment was evaluation on both academic and community criteria was important. Field to theory learning was important, especially the lived realities of community members, and being able to incorporate that into the classroom settings and even beyond was very important. Another one was structured reflection for agency was important, where deliberate creation of spaces of even listening and reflecting was became important. So now the program has moved beyond the pilot stage. So Communiversity is currently evolving into a larger initiative, and this degree is being evolved in Nepal in collaboration with Kathmandu University now, where students will learn across three geographic place-based immersion. And in this context, so recently the program has also been selected as Global Innovation Sandbox program, which is as it's like the first cohort, one of the first cohort members. Initiated by Duke University. It's selected alongside 48 institutions and one among the two institutions selected from Nepal. So it's a 12-month peer learning program convened by the Future University Alliance, incubated at Duke University, and from this as well, we're hoping to kind of merge this east-west notion of knowledge bearing and sharing, and also the generation of knowledge. So in this context, so how we are moving forward now is addressing this, in this context, the design-based challenges as well, so especially focusing on our inquiry and daring to reimagine higher education in a way like how can such models like this scale without losing their community embedded character as it is growing. Now, how do this kind of innovation remain non-extractive, giving back more than taking from community, and how do these innovations balance rigor, sustainability, and community responsive simultaneously? And in this context is to the contribution, I think from our side, we think from our side is conceptual, that it reframes community engagement as epistemic restructuring. It's also methodological, as it extends design-based research into community-embedded higher education through iterative, context-sensitive inquiry, and it's also practical measures that it offers, and kind of Asian pathway that we look back into our collectivist nature, collective holistic well-being, and also like that bring in community for rethinking higher education from local realities and relationships. So as a closing point, what I want to share is if higher education is to meet complex world, I think it must like do more than connect campus and communities. And perhaps the challenge for us now is to recognize community as legitimate site of knowledge and knowledge production in their own might, and how to bring in everything together. So yeah, thank you very much for listening today. And the It's in this evolving journey. We really look forward to learning from all of you as well. Thank you.